Welcome to CS288W Windows Network Administration. I am your instructor, Robert McMillen, and we are going to talk about objectives in our last module of our class. So congratulations for making it this far. Our objectives are going to be the Best Practices Analyzer, or BPA, Network Policy Server, and health check policies. And we'll actually do BPA and health check policies in our number 9 lab, which should be very useful to you. Best Practices Analyzer. Microsoft says in Windows management, best practices are guidelines that are considered the ideal way under typical circumstances to configure a server as defined by experts. So Microsoft has these experts that work for them either as contractors or employees, I'm not sure which, and they have decided that there is a certain setup in the servers that is considered the best secure, best performing, all these different bests that you can have it set up. And you can run BPA in each individual role that you install. So it's a server management tool to help reduce violations of an incorrect server setup. And violations is kind of a harsh word. It's really more just incorrectly set up that makes you vulnerable in some way. So BPA can be run on each server role that you install, and it can be run in the GUI or by command line. And as usual, the command line has more options than the GUI, but we're going to do the GUI for now and just make you aware of the command lines. Best Practices Analyzer measures compliance using 3 different security levels. Errors, informational, and warnings. Now, if that sounds familiar to you, it's because that's pretty much the same thing that you're going to see when you open up any Windows event viewer. So BPA uses the same type of measurements that you'll see in the BPA viewer. BPA measures the following categories. These are 8 different categories that some are more important than others. Of course, the top one is going to be security, to see how secure your server is from hackers and viruses and things like that. Performance, configuration, policy, operation, pre-deployment, deployment, and post-deployment. Now, those actually are very important because you can create a baseline for pre- and post-deployments so you can see how different your performance is after you, between the point where you do a pre-deployment and a post-deployment. Because if there's a big difference in performance, then you may have to give back some of those changes in order to make your server run right. And so just because the BPA experts say to do it, it doesn't mean it's the right decision for you. Sometimes the server becomes unusable using the applications or the configuration you're doing if you follow all of the BPA rules that come out there. But most of the time, the BPA rules are a good idea, and it will make things run better and more secure. And of course, prerequisites as well, to make sure before you do something, you've got the prerequisites met according to BPA. So if you want to scan a role by using BPA in the GUI, on the Windows taskbar, you click the Server Manager button, and on the Start screen, click the Server Manager tile. In the navigation pane, open a role or group page, and then you can run your BPA scans from a role or group page. It scans all roles that are installed on the servers in that group if you want to do them all at once. On the Tasks menu of the BPA tile, click Start BPA Scan, and that gets things going. Now on the command side, you have some commands to run BPA from PowerShell. So these will not run from just a plain old command prompt. You actually have to run them from a PowerShell because it's a script made up of a whole bunch of different commands inside one. So get BPA model, invoke BPA model, get result, and set result. So it doesn't hurt to go ahead and give those a try just to see what happens when you type them in, and so you can learn from that. Next thing we're going to talk about is a network policy server. Now, the NPS allows you to create and enforce organization-wide network access policies for client health, connection request authentication, and connection request authorization. So you can use NPS for the following categories: radius, server, and proxy. That's if you're going to connect to something like a Cisco firewall, for instance, that has radius on it. You can link those two together if you want. So any radius compliant device that needs to come back to Windows, or Windows needs to go back to it for some sort of authentication, you can set up NPS for that, so the right circumstances allow for that traffic to pass. We're going to be doing the network access protection policy server. So this is what we're going to be doing in our lab. Radius is not used that often. It's used often enough where you should be aware of it. You should know how to configure it at some point, but it's not used at every company. However, the network access protection, or NAP policy server, is something that will be widely used, and which is one of the reasons why we're going to focus on it for Lab 9. So in order to have a network policy server, you got to have network policies. So these policies are sets of conditions, constraints, and settings that allow you to designate who is authorized to connect to the network and the circumstances under which they can or cannot connect. So when you deploy a NAP server, health policy is added to the network policy configuration so that the network policy server, the NPS, performs client health checks during the authorization process. So all that is to say this: when you connect to the server from a computer, before that server allows traffic to pass, it's going to check a bunch of things, such as, is your antivirus up to date? Do you have your Windows firewall turned on? Those kinds of things, which we'll get into here. So there's 4 categories of properties for each network policy. There's the overview, the conditions, the constraints, and the settings. So let's talk about that for a second. So the conditions and the constraints have to do with what I just mentioned, whether or not certain things are installed and set up. And settings are which ones you decide to use, which ones you don't decide to use. So the NPS health policies consist of one or more system health validators, SHVs, and other settings that allow you to define client computer configuration requirements for the NAP-capable computers. So in order to be a NAP-capable computer, you're going to have to be joined to the domain, and it's going to have to be a Windows computer, obviously, so it's not going to be a Macintosh or a phone or a tablet, that kind of thing. If the client configuration state does not match the requirements that defined in the policy, NPS takes one of the following actions. The connection can be rejected. You can just say, hey, you're not connecting. Or you can be placed in a restricted network until your computer is compliant. So you basically say, hey, you're not compliant, but I'm not going to completely kick you off the network. I'm going to send you over to this other place where I will allow you to go out to the internet, update your antivirus, turn on your firewall, and get your Windows updates up to date. Or you could just say, you know what, I'm going to ignore the fact that you don't match the thing. I'll let you know that you don't match the requirements, but I'm just going to go ahead and pass the traffic anyway. So, of course, that's probably the least secure or effective way of doing things. So in our little lecture here, we talked about the best practices analyzer and the network policy server and health check policies. So let's actually get into our servers, DCO1, and our client, and do a couple of these demos so you know how it is that the lab is going to go. We are in our DCO1 server. And once you open up the server manager, on the left-hand side, you'll see Active Directory Domain Services, ADDS. So the only reason you see that is because it is an Active Directory controller. So let's scroll down, and on the right-hand side, or we're going to see in the main area, we're going to see Best Practices Analyzer. And in the right-hand side, you'll see Tasks, and we're going to say, hey, start the BPA scan. It's going to say, what server do you want to do? And it's going to automatically highlight DCO1, which is exactly what we want. Go ahead and click Start Scan. And this could take a few seconds, up to a few minutes. It doesn't take too long, but after it's all done, then we're going to analyze what it looks like. All right, cool. It's finished, and we only see 4 violations. Not too bad. You might see a lot more. You might see a couple less, but you're definitely going to see some violations. So we have here 3 warnings and 1 error. So let's double click on our warning, and we can see that here's our problem. And if you scroll down, it kind of gives you an idea. So if you want, you can do a Control-A, Control-C, And then we can, let's go ahead and open up Notepad. Get a better idea of what's going on. Make it a little easier to see here. Good. All right, so here's the problem. Some OUs in this domain are not protected from accidental deletion. If all OUs in your Active Directory domains are not protected from accidental deletion, then you may have an issue. So actually, let's format that to Word. There we go, Word wrap. Active Directory environment can experience disruptions, blah, blah, blah. Make sure all OUs in this domain are protected from accidental deletion. All right, so if I look up online, which is something you're going to be doing because you're going to resolve a couple of these issues. If I look up online as to what could cause that, then the answer is to go into Active Directory users and computers and to find an OU. We'll just take each one at a time, but I'm not going to in this particular time. And you actually have to turn on the View Advanced Features. There we go. So let's go back to that OU. And one of these tabs is going to say, is going to have a checkbox that says, oh, there it is, protect object from accidental deletion. So basically, once I check all those boxes for all these different OUs, and I click apply or OK, then I go back and I run BPA analyze the BPA again, and then it'll say, oh, okay, that's resolved. It won't come back anymore. So don't use this one as an example because I already did, but I'm sure you'll have more that are going to be in your BPA results that you can use and you can resolve. So another way we can protect our server, keep it secure, is we can run a command that tells us what ports are open on our, what ports that the server is listening on. And so we'll just open up our PowerShell, or you can open up a command prompt. It really doesn't matter. By the way, if you want a PowerShell to become a command prompt, all you have to do is type CMD, and now it's a command prompt. So, and you can do the same thing with the command prompt. You can turn it into PowerShell by typing the word PowerShell. So let's go ahead and type a command called Netstat space -an, which tells us what ports we're listening on, and then do the pipe command. Now the pipe command is underneath the backspace key in most keyboards, and then type the word more. And so what that'll do is there's a lot of open ports on a server, and what this is going to do is it's going to allow us to go page at a time using the space bar, so it doesn't just scroll all over the place. All right, so we hit enter and we can see, whoa, there's a lot of ports this guy's listening on. So you can page down one at a time until you get to the bottom. All right, now if we turn the firewall on, we'll see a lot less of these ports that are open. So go ahead and feel free to turn the firewall on. And let's do this again. There we go. Go to Control Panel, choose Use Recommended Settings. And now we're all good and ready to go. Okay, so let's take a look at some of these ports, and you're going to see things like 135, 389, 445, and you may not know what all these ports are, but typically up to the first 1024, they're known as well-known ports. You may know that from your networking classes, or if you've studied for certain A+ or Network Plus type tests. So I only care about the ones that are 1024 and less, of which we have about 6, 7, or 8 here. So what I want you to do is look up what these mean. Just 2 of them. Find out what 2 of these mean. And we're also going to do a screenshot of these as well. So just give me a screenshot of the ones under 1024. So you're going to look up what 2 of those ports mean, what they do. Tell me what it is that they do, and how they could be a security threat by leaving them open. If you find one that is not a security threat, then just move on to one that is. But pretty much anything under 1024 is going to have some sort of security threat to it by leaving it open. It may be minimal, it may be a lot, but just about all of them are going to have it. So that'll be a couple of your deliverables for this particular lab. Let's turn our attention to the Health Check Monitor and Network Policy Service in Windows Server 2012. So in order to install this, there's a few different things that we have to prepare to get started. So first thing we want to do is we want to install certificate services. Now, if you're doing the DHCP type of health check policy, you don't need to do this, but we're going to do the IPsec one because that one is more effective. DHCP can be defeated just by simply having a static IP address on your computer, so that's kind of useless. So let's use the health check policy in order to block people that don't have several things up to date. And let's go ahead and start by clicking on Active Directory Certificate Services and click Next. And any additional features it prompts you for, just go ahead and do that. All right, so as far as what things we're going to install with it, it's just going to be the certification authority. That's it. And let's go ahead and click Install, and that usually takes a few minutes. All right, now that that's installed, let's go ahead and click the button that says Configure Active Directory Certificate Services, and we'll go through the wizard. Certification authority, we definitely want to have that checked. All right, let's click Next. And we could do an enterprise certification authority, but in this case, we're just going to do the standalone. It can be members of a work group or the domain. Standalone CAs do not require Active Directory DS and can be used without a network connection. So the only reason we're doing this with the standalone one is because it's a little bit simpler to configure, but you can certainly do the enterprise one if you want to only affect domain members. So this is a root certification authority, so that's fine. And we're going to create a new private key. And let's just go ahead with the defaults. 2048 is plenty. And this is just the name. The server is already a domain controller, so this is the name of the server, and it's the name of the domain, etc. And you can check any amount of years you want. I personally like to go with 20 years. I just don't want to have to keep doing this. It'd be amazing. It's amazing how fast 5 years creeps up on you. So let's go ahead and click Next and Configure. And it says it's all done after a couple of minutes. And now we're going to close. All right, the next thing we're going to install is our network policy server. So network policy and access services. Go ahead and click that. Add the features as needed. Next. Just leave all this as the defaults. Next. Next. All right, so here's where we want to make one change. We want to go ahead and check the box for Health Registration Authority. Next. Now let's go ahead and choose to use the local certificate authority that we just created to issue certificates. Do you want to require that users be authenticated? Yes, we do. And we'll go ahead and click Install. All right, looks like it's finished. We'll go ahead and click Close. So we're all set. So we've got a couple of new things that have come up since we installed all that good stuff there. We've got the certification authority, which you can certainly click on just to see that it's showing green, and that there's really nothing that you need to do here. It's just it created its first certificate on its own. Another thing that it created was the Health Registration Authority. Again, nothing really to configure here. It just sort of shows that there is an installation here that was done, and you can just go ahead and it shows the DC01, which is good. We can go ahead and close that. So the thing we need to do is to go and configure the network policy server. So let's expand that. And there's this great wizard that you can use, so you don't have to figure out all the different things that you want to do. So let's go ahead and do that. Now you can click the drop-down list here where it says network policy, and there's a few different options here. So there's a radius way of doing this. So if you're using this for VPN connections, say to a Cisco firewall or something like that. But in our case, we're going to be using this directly on the server itself. That will affect everybody who connects to it. It doesn't matter if they're internal or external. So let's configure NAP. Click the wizard, and we'll hit the drop down. Now we have several options here as well. So we want to choose the IPsec with Health Registration Authority. This is the one that is the most secure. It's going to create an encryption between the two, and it's going to force the client to accept a certificate in order to check if if the computer is who it says it is, and the user is who they say they are, and also to encrypt the stream of data between the two. So let's go ahead and leave the defaults that you see there. It's just creating a policy name is all, which is fine. Now, we don't have any Radius clients because we're not using Radius in this particular thing. Machine groups, if you wanted to, you can add a group with computers in it. If you don't add a group, it will just affect all computers, which is exactly what we want. All right, so now we've got, by default, it's going to pick the Windows Security Health Validator, which is on this server. If you didn't pre-install the certificate services, you wouldn't see this option, and this whole thing would fail. So we definitely want to do that. You also have the option to auto-remediate client computers. We don't want to do that because we want to see the client computers fail just to confirm that it's working properly. If you leave this on, what it'll try to do is it will try to automatically do things to make the PCs compliant, such as turn on the firewall, turn on the antivirus, all the things, turn on Windows updates and run the updates. And again, that's a great thing in a production environment, but for our test environment, we want to just, see that it's going to fail to confirm that it's working. All right, we'll go ahead and click Finish. Now, if we expand several things here, you'll see what it is that we just did. So the first thing we did was it created these NAP policies. It created a policy for compliance, and it created a policy for non-compliance. So basically, if the computer is compliant, it's going to pass the traffic. If it's not compliant, it won't pass the traffic. So you had to create 2 of these policies, and the wizard automatically did that for us, which is great. Now, under health policies, it did the same thing. So we have IPsec with HRA compliant and with non-compliant. So let's go ahead and move down the line here, and we can see the last thing it created, which is the default configuration. Now, the wizard didn't create this. This got created when the network policy server was checked in Server Manager, and this was installed. This automatically creates a default configuration. And you can create a second one, a third one, or whatever it is you want. But in this particular case, the default one is just fine. So what it's going to check is if the firewall is enabled, if there's an antivirus, and it doesn't have to be Windows antivirus, just one that works with Windows. Is the antivirus up to date? Is the anti-spyware up to date? And Windows Defender is fine for that. Automatic updating is turned on for Windows. And what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, if these things aren't up to date, then we're going to go, for as far as Windows updates goes, we're going to restrict access to the client. And we're going to say we want all the updates done, and we want everything updated within the last hour. Now, that may not be realistic in your environment, but this, again, is just a test environment, so you can change that if you want. You can also check the box for Windows Server Update Services in case you have a SUS server on your network, which we do not. So let's go ahead and click OK. All right, we are all done with the policy, but now we have to go to the next step, which is group policy. So we have to get group policy to turn on some things. Now, I've already pre-configured these group policies, but we're just going to go through them just so you can see the changes that I made. So let's go ahead and open up Group Policy Editor, or Group Policy Management, I should say. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a new group policy. And like I said earlier, I've already created it. I'm going to show you the changes that I made. So what you want to do is right-click on Widget LLC internal, your domain name, and click Create a GPO in this domain and link it here. So you're going to call it Lockdown Users. So let's right-click on it and choose Edit. And let's expand. All right, so we're going to make 3 changes to this group policy. First one we're going to do is we're going to expand computer configuration and then policies. And then we're going to go to administrative templates and Windows components. Administrative templates and Windows components. All right, if I'm going too fast, just go ahead and pause things until you get caught up. Next, we're going to go down to Security Center. So it's all alphabetical, so just go ahead and get there. And then we're going to have the option here to turn on Security Center. So double click on that and choose Enable. By default, it's set to Not Configured. Okay, let's go to change number 2. And again, computer configuration, policies, but this time we're going to go to Windows settings. And then security settings. And then system services. All right, this shows all of the services that are going to be on a computer. And what we're going to do is we're going to tell it to go to Network Access Protection Agent, which is installed on all Windows 7 and newer computers. And we're going to define the policy by checking the box and then clicking Automatic and then click OK. So what this does is it will automatically turn on the network access protection, and it will keep them from turning it back off. All right, the last change we need to do is to go down a few more folders to where it says Network Access Protection. And we're going to expand NAP Client Configuration. And we're going to expand Enforcement Clients. There we go. And then we're going to go to the DHCP Quarantine Enforcement Client. And we're going to enable that. Now, the only reason why you would not want to enable this is if you don't feel the need to quarantine users. We're not going to quarantine users in this particular lab video, but what that does is it allows you to send people off to another subnet where they can't have access to your main servers, and it allows them to be quarantined until they get compliant. So we'll go ahead and enable it, even though we're not going to go any farther with it in this particular exercise. So we can go ahead and close that all down because that's the only changes we need to make. Now we're going to go to Tools and DHCP. And we've got our server. We've got DHCP already installed. If you don't see the green light on there, or for some reason it got uninstalled somehow, just go back to the server roles and add it back in. All right, so we're going to right-click on our server and go to Properties. And pardon me, we're going to go down one step from that. IP version 4 and go to Properties. And we're going to go to Network Access Protection. And we're going to check the box that says Enable on all scopes. DHCP server behavior when network is unreachable, we can just go ahead and leave it at full access. In our case, it's going to be reachable. But if you wanted to, you could drop the client or restrict access, whatever it is that you want. In our case, we're going to leave it as it is. All right, now we are in our client computer, and we're going to make sure this computer is as non-compliant as possible. We're going to go to our Windows firewall, and we're going to make sure it's turned off. All right, let's go back to our control panel items. We're going to go to Windows Defender, and we're going to change Windows Defender. We're just going to turn it off as well. So turn on real-time protection is now off. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and close that. And we're going to go to our Windows Updates and also make sure that that is turned off. You can click on Change Settings and just change it to Never Check. So this is as non-compliant as it could be. So let's go ahead and restart it, and let's see if we're able to still access the network. All right, we're rebooted. Let's go ahead and log back in. Now, the reason it's letting us in, of course, is because our credentials are cached. If you had never logged in with this domain user, then you would not even get this far. So let's go ahead and open up Windows Explorer. And let's open up a command prompt and do an ipconfig. And we can see we now have a 169 address. So it hasn't even given us an IP address on our subnet. And just for fun, we can just put in our server name, hit enter, and you can see it's just never going to get access to that server, especially with having an automatic private IP address. We're not on the 192.168 network even. So after about 30 seconds or so, you're going to get a pop-up that says cannot access the network. Now let's go back to our DC01. And let's just go to Event Viewer in the Windows logs and the Security tab. So we go there, and you can see all these audit failures. And if you read it, it says the network policy server has denied access to this user. Computer name, client. So look at that. It worked. So make sure you get all your screenshots that you need from that exercise, and hopefully that'll be useful to you in your working career. And that will do it for CS 288W. And this is our last module, so thanks for being a part of the class, and good luck to you in your studies and graduation.